What's up, guys? Toad back with you for the college football week 12 video. I only have two plays that I'm going to give out on this one. I don't like this college football card at all this week, man. I know there have been a lot of midweek games, whatever. I don't think I played anything in the middle of the week this week. Last week, I had one midweek game, I think, and the prior week, I think I also had one, and I think I went 4-0 last week, and I've been, just cooking in college football, man. I think I'm 10-1. I'm on a 10-1 run in college football right now. I've had a really good college football season. Same cannot be said for college basketball. Fuck tonight. Tonight, 0-3 in college basketball, 1-4 overall. I don't know what to tell you, man. The only loser that was really bad, I think, was one of the ones in college basketball. Penn, I think, was the really bad one that wasn't even close. The other ones were at least kind of close, especially Maryland. I mean, Maryland had the lead and blew it, and that was just... There was a huge free throw discrepancy in that game. I think there was some biased reffing going on there, and it pisses me off even more that some of my leans that I did not play got there, like Wisconsin and whatever. And then I think the other college basketball game I had was off by only a couple of points as well. I forget what it even was. UNC Wilmington, they're winning earlier in the game. I think they won and they didn't cover, something like that. I don't even know, man. And then Washington Wizards is what I was thinking of. The Washington Wizards... I didn't get the best of that number, actually. I moved up one more point. The market was really hard to read on a lot of those games today. I got to do better, man. I just don't know what to tell you. Although I thought the spots were decent in those. The Wizards probably should have covered, to be honest. I mean, they were winning by double digits at the end of the first quarter. And, yeah, I know, Tyler. I'm not watching the fight. I gotta get the college football in. I don't care about a staged fight, man. Even though... I told people that they should bet on Jake Paul, which I did not actually even do. I didn't say I was betting it. I didn't even talk about it on this show, but that was the way that I leaned in that one. Washington Wizards, though, pissing me off, man. They had a terrible second and third quarter after they were out to a huge lead, and it looked like it was going to be a no-sweat cover, at least in that one. And then they had to make a huge comeback attempt in the fourth quarter, and they almost got back within the number and still didn't do it. Yeah, I said Jake Paul was going to win. Charles, what's up, man? Hopefully I'm proven right and I win some of the friendly bets that I have with some people. What else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and then I did win on the Calgary Flames. I have been crushing hockey, dude. Talking about crushing. I'm crushing college football and I'm crushing hockey. And NBA hasn't been that bad either. Starting to cook a little bit in the NBA, except tonight I went 0-1, but... College basketball is the huge problem right now. I'm still up this year, but I want to get more padding. I was hot until tonight, man. I had a nice run this week, but college basketball's got to get better. I think I'm 4-10-1 in college basketball now, and I was 2-1-1, so you can kind of figure out how that's been going. NHL, yeah, the NHL has been rolling for me big time. I don't even know what I am in the NHL now, but I've been destroying the NHL. Hopefully I'll keep that up. I haven't looked at NHL, NBA, or college basketball yet for tomorrow. I've only looked at college football, which is what we're here to talk about here. And college football, man, I've been doing well. I really don't like this card very much. I mean, I'll talk about some of these games, and if you guys throw out more of these games you want me to discuss on the show, I will, because I think this is actually going to be a pretty short college football show this time, because there aren't a whole lot of games that are that interesting. A couple of cupcakes are in the mix as well. I don't know what else to say about some of these games, really, but I'm going to talk about some of the ranked versus ranked matchups first, I guess. There are only two of them. Missouri and South Carolina is one of them, and I don't even think this is even that interesting of a game. 23 versus 21, Missouri and South Carolina. I forgot to talk about South Carolina last week, by the way, because that was an interesting game. South Carolina was laying up to 6 points on the road against Vandy. I wanted to talk about it on the show last week, and I completely forgot to talk about it because I've been saying Vandy's overrated ad nauseum, basically, and that was finally a spot where I thought maybe fading Vandy was the right way to go. Vandy coming off a slew of big games, and I think they were coming off of that close game against Texas to continue that run of close games. And South Carolina, though, was coming off blowing out Texas A&M, though. So that was the one reason why I couldn't really jump on board with South Carolina, although I know a bunch of pros had South Carolina last week, and they did get there anyway. I mean, that line just looked totally bizarre. The public was going to come in, taking Vandy, the very hyped team, very public team this year after what we've seen them do. Getting up to 6 points at home looked way too easy to take Vandy last week, and South Carolina was the right side. But now we have Missouri, South Carolina, and the line in this game is just ridiculous, dude. Like, even given the injury situation, I still don't understand this line at all. South Carolina is up from 12 to 13.5. 75% of the tickets, 73% of the cash. I mean, South Carolina is good, but this is just crazy that the line has gotten to this point where Missouri started the season as a top 10 ranked team. I mean, we know they're not actually a top 10 ranked team, but Missouri, it's just shocking to me that they've fallen off to this degree, man. And I think maybe the line has gotten too far, because when I heard that this was the line in the game, I was like, no, that can't be right. Like, that just doesn't totally make sense to me, dude. Like, just based on what we've seen out of these teams and what the lines have been this season, the line seems like it's a bit too high. I know some professionals actually like the South Carolina side in this one. I'm not going to go as far on that one. I think the line is probably a little bit too much at this point, but the line is a little bit higher than it would be otherwise, because Missouri is without Cook, their quarterback. He went down, I think, in this Auburn game, and he has not been back. Pine has come in to replace him. Yeah, misery in Missouri. I recommended in that fight, taking Jake Paul to win by decision, by the way. I thought that was I didn't talk about it on my show, though. Maybe I should have, just because everybody's talking about this fight. But the public was all over Mike Tyson, dude. When you have a public underdog like that, I mean, it's not really the side that you want to be on. But instead of taking Jake Paul, laying like a big price, like minus 215, 220 to win, I thought that taking him to win by decision was the better way to go, because you get a cheaper price on it. And I think if he wins, it is likely going to be in a decision, because Tyson is more of the knockout artist, obviously. So if he wins, it's probably going to be a knockout. If Paul wins, it's probably going to decision. But Mike Tyson he's way too old, man. I mean, that was my handicap in that one. He hasn't fought for 4 years. Wow, he might not make it. Yeah, man. So maybe that won't happen. I don't know what else I was going to say here, but back to college football, I guess. Missouri, so they have Pine in there, and Pine has been awful. So you definitely have to downgrade Missouri to some extent off of that, but still, it seems like this line has gotten too far out of hand. I don't know, man. Missouri, I mean, I think with their 2 losses, we know they're not going anywhere now, even though they are in the SEC. They are a 2-loss team, and they're kind of, I mean, they're not really in the mix anymore. I think they don't have the tiebreaker against enough teams. I think it's over for Missouri. So what do they have left to play for? Well, maybe they'll play against this ranked South Carolina team. Missouri's coming off a game against Oklahoma where they only won by 7. And I think this game, Missouri actually was, I thought they were winning by more than that. Maybe they weren't. They're actually losing the game, actually, so never mind about that. But Missouri actually did outplay them a little bit, but they also had the benefit of being +3 in turnovers, even though they also outgained Oklahoma. So I don't understand how the final was even this close if they were +3 in turnovers, with Oklahoma committing 4 turnovers. Missouri outgaining them and still only winning by 7. That's, I guess, kind of an indictment of Missouri. But again, like, I think the line value can't really be on South Carolina with the number being that high. Now, in South Carolina, I mean, they're not going anywhere either, and they have reached bowl eligibility now. That was a big win for them, really, against Vandy. So South Carolina, a lot of times you see when a team's goal basically is bowl eligibility and not a whole lot more than that. I think maybe we could say that about South Carolina, because I don't think we expected much out of them to start the season with, like, Spencer Rattler gone and whatever. So you might see them take a little bit of a step back as well off of that, getting that 6th win. But then again, I mean, this is a home game against a ranked team. They do have one more home game left, but it's against Wofford. So I don't know if that is going to be senior day, I guess, but I don't know if they're really going to treat that big, as this is going to be their final Division I home game at the very least. This is a very difficult handicap, man. So needless to say, I'm not betting this game at all. The market read looks like South Carolina is public now, just because the public is just completely off of Missouri now. Recency, I mean, Missouri has not been very good recently. South Carolina's looked like the better team, and obviously they are, as the odds makers are telling you that. But Missouri, I mean, with Cook gone now, it's just not a good situation for them. But like I said, the line just seems pretty much out of control at this point. So it might be a spot where maybe taking the points would make sense there, but obviously I'm not doing it. And then the other ranked matchup, what was the other ranked matchup here? Did I skip over it? I don't know. I'm just scrolling all over the place here. Well, I know what it is. It's Georgia. Georgia and Tennessee. Yeah, I didn't skip over it, I guess, because that other game I think is in the afternoon. This is a night game. Tennessee, number 7 at Georgia, number 12. And those rankings, man, those rankings do not tell you the story because the line on this game, Georgia is a 9-point favorite. So the odds makers are telling you who the better team actually is here. But I actually would agree with taking the Georgia side in this one, or laying the points with Georgia in this one. Georgia's up from 8.5 to 9, as you can see. 54% of tickets on them right now, and 53% of the cash on the other side on Tennessee. But I would be surprised if Tennessee doesn't wind up being a public underdog in this one, because they're the team that's higher ranked. They have the offense that sort of is still perceived as the better offense, I think. So the public likes to come in on the better offense, and they have the better record. So it seems to me like the perception would be this line is a bit high, and that there would appear to be value taking the points with Tennessee. So I'm kind of surprised that the public is not coming in more on the Tennessee side. And maybe by tomorrow we will see that being the case. Jake is dragging it to a decision. I don't know, man. There might be money involved. Not my money, but people that took my advice maybe put some money down there. But I think there's money just involved in the fight being longer, right? Like getting more eyes on it. So I think that might be helpful to people if it goes to the decision and goes as long as possible. But I like the Georgia side in this one. I mean, the odds makers are telling you that the rankings are wrong and that the records are misleading. Georgia, I mean, they have a loss to Alabama, and Georgia made a nice comeback in that one. And Georgia, as we know, they never beat Alabama. So we're not going to indict them for that. And then Georgia also, of course, as we know, lost to Ole Miss. But Ole Miss is a very good team this year, too. They're underrated. Ole Miss, very, very good offensively. Georgia is coming off of that. So you might think that might put them in the hangover spot because they hadn't lost since that Alabama game earlier. But they were not even in a hangover spot after that Alabama game, man. They played fine against Auburn after that. And I think the same is going to happen here, but mostly it's because they're hosting a ranked team in Tennessee who's actually ranked above them, and Georgia needs to win out at this point, man. Like, obviously Georgia's goal is to get back to the national title game. They want another championship. They are potentially good enough to do that. Like, they're one of the top teams still in college football, so they're not going to, like, lapse in focus or anything like that, in my opinion, and they should win these other two games, obviously. I mean, UMass, no problem. Georgia Tech, they should be a big favorite. I don't even know if Georgia Tech, well, I guess they did get King back last week, so he will probably be there still, but this is the one, like, remaining game that's maybe in question for Georgia right now, but as we can see, they're a big favorite. I expect Georgia to show up. I think this is going to be more of a bounce-back spot for them off of that game, because they need it, man. With that being their second loss, they can't afford anymore. They got to get back to the playoff, and then once they basically just have to make the playoff, and then anything can happen at that point. So I do like Georgia for all those reasons. I think this is just a line that is indicating what you need to know here, and the odds makers are giving you that information, and everything else makes it look like the line shouldn't be this big, but it is, and it is for a reason. And Tennessee, I mean, they've dropped off, really, after a hot start to the season. I've mentioned Tennessee has not played that difficult to schedule, man. I mean, really, Alabama was obviously their biggest game, which they did win, but the rest of these teams that they faced that were ranked to start the season, NC State, Oklahoma, we know they're no good at this point. I mean, Arkansas is actually decent, and Tennessee lost to them. Florida, kind of decent, I guess, mediocre, and Tennessee kind of struggled in that game, too. So Georgia, I think, indeed is the better team here. Georgia has faced a tougher schedule as well and is more battle-tested a little bit than Tennessee is as well. So, and I think you're looking at a point where Georgia may actually be better than Tennessee on both sides of the ball, because Tennessee's offense has kind of slowed down a bit as well. And they're coming off kind of just a whatever game against Mississippi State that doesn't really indicate anything at all. I mean, who cares? The game against Mississippi State, there's really nothing that type of game would indicate. So Lean to Georgia in that one. It's not one of my plays, however. And then I was going to talk about the Pitt game because that's kind of the other big game that's almost a ranked matchup because Pitt has just dropped out of the rankings with that loss to Virginia. They lost 2 games in a row, and I bet against them in both of those games, man. SMU beat them, and then Pitt, I think, was hung over last week from that game and lost the game twice, essentially, and lost to Virginia. This might be a spot where they might bounce back, though, man, against Clemson. Clemson's still in the rankings at 20. Pitt is out of the rankings, but I don't know, man. I mean, Pitt is going to be without their quarterback in this game, though, so that is something to be aware of. Their quarterback is injured, but with a team like Pitt, it's Holstein as their quarterback. I think he got injured in the last game, and I think he's not expected to start this game, but I don't think that matters that much, man. Holstein, because Pitt is more of a team that runs the ball a lot with Reed there, getting most of the rushing yards. I mean, Holstein is a dual threat quarterback too, but I don't think Pitt's going to suffer that much of a setback with Holstein out of there because they do run the ball so often and they play pretty good defense, and they may actually be the better of these two defenses, and they're getting points here against Clemson. So I do kind of like Pitt to bounce back. I think after those 2 ugly losses, I think we've seen this line swing too far in the other direction. And Pitt, I mean, I don't know where they're going to be sitting mentally because they do have 2 losses now, so probably they're not going to be making – they probably know they're not going to be making like the playoff now or anything like that. Those hopes are probably dashed. But when you have a team like Clemson coming into your place, man, I think that's reason for you to still show up in a game like that. When one of the top teams, one of the ranked teams in your conference is coming in, you're probably going to not want to embarrass yourselves, and you're probably going to want to show up and beat them. And Pitt, off of kind of an embarrassing loss in that last game, I think Pitt may be able to cover this number, man. They play a lot of kind of lower scoring, ugly games now with the way that they've been playing recently with running the ball a lot and playing defense. Clemson, on the other hand, I think they're actually coming – I don't know. I thought they were coming out of a bye, but they're not. They beat Virginia Tech last week, and that was off of their first loss since the opening game against Georgia. They lost to Louisville, but they still were able to get a win after that at Virginia Tech, where I thought that maybe they'd be in a hangover spot coming off of that big Louisville game, but I guess they were not. Clemson they're still trying to make the playoff, man. Clemson is a 2-loss team. I think their hopes are probably still alive, I would say, especially because they can still win the ACC. They're up ahead of Miami now with the tiebreakers, and they have SMU to contend with. But Clemson, I mean, they can still do it, so I think they're probably going to have reason to still show up in this game as well against Pitt, which is their final ACC game, actually. So I do still lean to the Pitt side, though, just because I think they're going to be more of the bounce-back spot, and I think this line has just gotten out of hand. Clemson up from 9 to 12, 62% of tickets on them, 52% of the cash on the Pittsburgh side. So I do lean with the market in that one, the market percentage, at least to the Pittsburgh side. And if you do agree with that, you're just getting more line value now. And I think this line moved mostly because of the quarterback situation. It probably would have been closer to 9 if Holstein was in there. And even that seems a little bit high. It went to decision. I am the wizard of odds. Thank you, man. My college basketball has been awful, though, and I want to turn it around tomorrow. Like I said, I haven't even looked at college basketball yet. I'm going to wake up and look at the college basketball card. So we will see what happens there. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on Clemson, Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't know if you guys want me to talk about any of these other games. I mean, Ohio State and Northwestern, just because it's here, it came to mind. Ohio State's down from 30.5 to 28.5. I don't usually get involved in these like large spreads like this, but 52% of tickets on Ohio State, 51% of the cash on Northwestern. I do kind of agree with where that move has gone and where the cash percentage is there with taking the huge amount of points with Northwestern, because they do get involved in a lot of ugly, low-scoring games, and Ohio State may just be kind of vanilla on offense in this one and not want to show that much. So Ohio State is at the very least in a look-ahead spot. I mean, who would have thought that this game would be as big as it's going to be with Ohio State against Indiana next week, where I do think Ohio State's going to win that game and be a substantial favorite at home. Like, I don't think it's going to be that big, like as big as people think it is. I think Indiana's good, but they're not as good as Ohio State. And Ohio State's sitting with 1 loss. They can't really afford to lose again, but still, there is the potential that they just think this game's going to be easy. I think they'll show up and they'll win the game, but will they cover a 4-touchdown spread? I mean, that's a little bit iffy. with especially because they're more of a defense-focused team. But they've had some of these teams so far down offensively that it's possible that this awful Northwestern offense could get blanked by this Ohio State defense, man. I don't know. They may score like 6 points or less in this game. I mean, who knows? But just figured I would mention that game as well, just because it is out there. It is up there on the board. I don't know if there are any other games that are really that interesting or that like big that we could talk about. Maybe there are a few. I mean, Arizona State, Kansas State is kind of an interesting one because these teams are both 7-2 and kind of near the top of the Big 12, and they're both still kind of in the mix here for the Big 12. Arizona State, I think, is like pretty significantly the worst team in here though in this matchup. I think they face an easier schedule than Kansas State has, and they're coming off a win over UCF where I thought UCF might be able to win that game. I thought it was a bad spot for Arizona State, maybe a potential look ahead to this game as well, but they took care of business. At least they beat UCF, but now they have to go on the road to Kansas State, and this is an unfamiliar environment for Arizona State, man, because they're new to the Big 12, so they're not used to playing at some of these venues, although they were able to win at Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma State sucks. They did lose at Texas Tech, and they lost at Cincinnati. So Oklahoma State is their only road win in conference. They're 1-2 on the road in conference. So that doesn't look that great for Arizona State. They do have BYU up next, but I don't think they're really going to overlook Kansas State because this is a huge game. I mean, they're both big, they're both teams that are up near the top of the Big 12, like I said, and Kansas State is a ranked team, of course, but I think this is a spot where Kansas State is going to show up, and when you get the better team, which Kansas State is, and they have reason to show up and want to win this game, I think you want to look that way, so I do lean to Kansas State here. Kansas State's coming out of a bye, and that bye, I think, came at the right time, man, because they had played that game against Kansas that was way more difficult than they thought, in that big rivalry game. Kansas stepped it up against them, and they had to, I think they had to score late to escape in that game. They came off of that, and I think they were hung over a little bit, man, and they lost to Houston, who is not a very good team, where maybe I should have played Arizona tonight. I know there were a bunch of professionals on Arizona tonight, and I mentioned that I did lean that way this morning on my show, but the market read was kind of against it, and it just looked a little bit weird to me, so I didn't do it. But Kansas State, I mean, that loss to Houston is just embarrassing in general, and then having a bye after that, I think, is going to help Kansas State fix some things and get right. And with Arizona State sitting at 7-2, I think Kansas State is going to show up, and they're the better team. Even though the teams have the same record, Arizona State, Arizona's blowing out Houston. I should have played it. Kansas State is the better team here, man. I mean, I just think that is just a definitive statement, basically. Kansas State's down from 9 to 7.5, though, so that just means you're getting a better number on Kansas State. 70% of the tickets on them and 92% of the cash, so it looks like Kansas State is still a little bit public, where I expected the public to maybe be a little bit more split on this game because it looks like kind of a big line. It looks like one of those games where the line looks too big and these teams have the same record, so you think it might be a competitive game and the public might think it makes sense to take the points here, but I guess they're still not doing it just because Kansas State's a kind of big name still, but it looks like the cash, like the bigger money, is also on the Kansas State side there. And like I said, I agree with it. I think it's a good spot for Kansas State to bounce back, and they're still in the mix for the Big 12, so I do like that. Oregon at Wisconsin. I think this is a tricky spot for Oregon, dude. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I considered taking the points with Wisconsin in this one, although I didn't do it. But Oregon, I mean, I think Oregon is not actually the best team in college football. I think they're a top 5 team. They're one of the best offenses, but I think if they wind up having to face Ohio State again, that Ohio State defense is going to win out. And Ohio State's offense is almost as good as Oregon's is. I mean, of course, Oregon caught Ohio State in the best possible way, right? With Ohio State having to go out to the Pacific Coast and play them there, which they're not used to doing because Oregon is new to the Big Ten. So, and Ohio State still almost won that game. So I think if they were to match up again at some point, that Ohio State would be able to win the game and they would be the favorite on a neutral. So Oregon, maybe not quite as good as they may look. The Boise State win is actually one of their more impressive wins. The Illinois win is not that impressive. And the rest of their schedule has actually been kind of easy, to be honest. And now they have to go on the road again. And yes, they've been fine on the road this season so far. But Oregon State, UCLA, those are both places they're used to playing because they played both of them in the Pac-12 when they were all there. Of course, beating Purdue on the road, I'm not going to be impressed by that. I mean, Purdue was just god-awful. And then they did beat Michigan in the Big House by 21, so that's a pretty impressive win. But Michigan a bit down this year as well. Going to Camp Randall, though, man, I mean, this looks like a tricky spot because the longer you go and remain undefeated like this, everybody's gunning for you. Everybody wants to take you down. You have a target on your back, and it's not that easy to have to go to Wisconsin, Camp Randall. Wisconsin's kind of gone back. Like, it looked like they were trying to run like a spread offense for a little while, but they seem to have returned to the Wisconsin style that we remember for most of the history of the football program there, where Wisconsin does like to run the ball again and play defense. So if Wisconsin is able to do that, getting a bunch of points at home, it might make sense to take Wisconsin here. And Oregon, I mean, they might be looking ahead a little bit to Washington here, man, because that's a big, not only is that a rivalry game, but that is like an old rivalry, old school Pac-12 rivalry. I mean, they were both in the Pac-12 last year, but Washington was the team that ended Oregon's season last year. If you remember this, Oregon was favored against Washington in the Pac-12 championship, and Washington beat them. So Oregon is going to have that game circled, man. So I think Oregon could look past Wisconsin here. I mean, this, like I said, this looks like a tricky spot. Oregon's not used to going up there and playing in Wisconsin. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. It's going to be cool, 47, but I guess the weather's going to be fine, so not really a huge deal there. But, man, I like the Wisconsin side in this one. Close to a play for me, but hasn't made my card. Wisconsin, I mean, they're coming off just an embarrassing, ugly loss to Iowa, and they're still looking to become bowl eligible, which I think it's likely that they will. I mean, they'll probably be able to win this game at home against Minnesota if they really need to. If they don't beat Nebraska on the road next. Wisconsin's coming out of a bye, man, and that bye, I think, came at a good time for Wisconsin, too, because that was their most embarrassing loss of the season, man. Even though Iowa's good, they're good defensively, but you lose to anybody 42-10, you're going to be pissed off, and you're going to try to fix some things during your bye. So Wisconsin has that extra week to prepare something here. They still need that one more win to become bowl eligible. They got the number one team coming into their place, man. Unfamiliar environment for Oregon. Night game. Crowd's going to be crazy. Yeah, 47 is not cold when you always have the you have the padding on it, whatever. Yeah, it's true. But this is, man, this is a spot where it looks like Wisconsin would be the right side to look at here. Oregon's sitting at 13.5. It's still 13.5. If you like Wisconsin, I wouldn't even play it now because Oregon's public, and it looks like this line is moving up a little bit. So there may already be 14s out there. So you could probably get 14 on Wisconsin if you wait, or maybe even right now. 86% of the tickets and only 79% of the cash on the Oregon side. And the total's gone down a little bit from 53.5 to 51. 67% of tickets on the over, but 57% of the cash on the under. And when you see the cash coming down on the under, that tends to indicate something, man. Kind of indicates that's some like legitimate money coming in, thinking this is maybe going to be a little bit of a low-scoring game. So I would take the points with Wisconsin in this one. And this one was one of the ones that just was left off my card, basically. Like, I kind of want to do it now that I'm talking about this more. I mean, I think the Wisconsin side is a decent side there. I did not bet on the fight, Jay Forte, but I kind of wanted to, actually. I was considering it. I would have played Jake Paul to win in decision, as people can attest to here. No Way Jose. That's one of the other shows on the Tower Gang Network. Jose doesn't follow sports. Charles, you don't bet sports? I thought you did. Where's Nate, by the way? Nate is the guy who actually, he's the guy in the chat who actually bets and wants to run his bets by me. Naturally, yes. I was natural a little while ago on the space that I was in for Swamp Creatures. I was naked while I did that space because nobody could see me. So, all right. Should I get to my actual plays? Because I don't know. If you guys want me to talk about any of these other games, I will. But this is going to be a shorter college football episode. Like I said, I mean, there aren't a lot of big games here. Are there any other games that I should really talk about that are big? Actually, I'm going to talk about Kansas BYU because this is a game where, like, both of these teams are in spots where I wanted to play against them, dude. I mean, Kansas, I don't see how they can continue like putting in efforts like this week after week. Like at some point, I think they have to lose steam. They played that huge game against Kansas State, big rivalry game for Kansas. Barely lost. They could have won that game and taken down their rival, Kansas State. Either way, I think that put them in a hangover spot in the next game. But the fact that they were playing Iowa State and hosting them meant that they were probably still going to show up for that game against Iowa State, and they did. And they won the game against Iowa State as a fairly substantial underdog, I think. And Iowa State was coming in kind of in a hangover spot because Iowa State had just lost their undefeated status. So I thought that might hang them over into that game against Kansas. I did lean to the Kansas side on that, but now Kansas is coming off 2 big wins. Now they have to go out on the road to BYU, out into high elevation, basically in Utah, to a place that they never play, off of 2 big wins against more familiar foes. This doesn't look like an easy spot to me for Kansas, man. I would not want to play Kansas in a spot like this, even though it is BYU, an undefeated team ranked 6th in the country. So it's not like Kansas is going to not be focused for this, but it's just a really difficult environment when you don't know where you're going and whatever, and you're coming off multiple big wins in a row. It's just how long can Kansas really sustain this, man? I don't know if they can continue doing it, but I wouldn't want to play BYU either because BYU is coming off their big rivalry game against Utah, the in-state rival there in Utah. As bad as they've been without Cam Rising this year, that Cam Rising injury sent them completely spiraling out of control. As bad as Utah has been, Utah put in a big effort in that game and almost won the game. Utah was winning almost that entire game, and BYU somehow yet again, just like they did at the end of the Oklahoma State game, they pulled another win out of their ass right at the end, this time on the road. And yes, there were some questionable reffing calls in that game as well down the stretch. I had it on over here, I think, while I was doing one of my shows for you guys. I think I was doing the NFL show Saturday night, I think, while that game was on. So BYU's coming off that game, a big rivalry game. And they do have Arizona State up next, who is the remaining, like, if they have any threats on the schedule remaining, it's Arizona State, because they are still sitting at 7-2 and 2 losses in conference. Although BYU is almost guaranteed a spot in the Big 12 title game at this point, and it is likely they're going to make the playoff. Probably even as a one-loss team, they're still probably going to make the playoff, even though they would like to go undefeated. But I do think BYU is a bit overrated. So I think both of these teams are in really bad spots, so I don't want to get involved in this game at all on either side. I don't like either side here, but look at this line, dude. This line is crazy. BYU down from 3.5 to 2.5 at home against Kansas. So the odds makers are telling you, and I've talked about Kansas not being that good at all. The odds makers are telling you, I don't even understand how this is the case. The odds makers are saying with this line that BYU is not even getting home field here and that Kansas is the better team. This line looks so suspicious to me, man. BYU, 56% of the tickets, 52% of the cash. I think they're actually more public than these numbers are telling you. Like, how could the public not be pouring in on BYU here, man? Even though I know Kansas has looked good the last couple of weeks. BYU, I mean, they're undefeated, and it looks so easy. It's basically just pick the winner at home. BYU against Kansas. This is one of the most suspicious lines I've ever seen, dude. It looks like a trap. Like, the odds makers have to know that the recreational bettors are all going to come in on the BYU side, even though the number doesn't seem to be playing that out right now. But it looks like a trap type of line. The odds makers are telling you something here. That would have me leaning to Kansas big time here. But like I said, I can't play Kansas when they're in a spot like this, going into an unfamiliar environment like this, off of 2 big wins. I can't do it, man. So I'm going to leave the game alone, but that is crazy that the line looks like that. So because of that, I might have to lean to the Kansas side just because the line looks so sus. I mean, it's crazy. So I figured, yeah, I should talk about that game because it's insane. There's no other way to put it, man. It's crazy. I haven't talked about any of these lower conference games. Yeah, skip it. And my 2 plays are actually in larger conferences as well. So I'm not going to be talking about the smaller conferences this week, man. Even though I tend to have plays in some of them, but I will actually point out Louisville, I think, is in a bad spot too. I'll just throw that out there too. I was potentially looking to maybe play against Louisville in this game. Actually, should I? This looks like the type of spot where I would play this game. I mean, Louisville, I thought they were already in the Dream Crusher after they lost to Miami, dude, because that was their third loss, so they can't make the playoff, I don't think. I don't even know, is it possible for them to make the ACC championship? Because I think if they were to win the ACC championship, they would still make the playoff. So, I don't know, man, but I thought that was a Dream Crusher, third loss, and they didn't play well against BC, but they were able to come back and win the game anyway. But that was a sandwich spot regardless, because they were coming off a huge game over Miami where both teams went up and down the field, and they almost were able to beat Miami, and they had Clemson up next, so that was a sandwich spot. And then what did they do last week? Second straight road game. They refocused after a bad performance against BC, and they beat Clemson on the road as a big underdog. That's a huge win for Louisville. They have a third straight road game now, and they have to go out to the Pacific Coast, which they have not done this season. They're not used to going out there to Stanford at all. I mean, because Stanford's new to the ACC, so this looks like a spot where they might get caught, and they do have Pitt up next. And even though Pitt dropped out of the rankings, Pitt was ranked all year. They were undefeated until 2 weeks ago, so that's a bigger game too. So this does look like a sandwich spot. Should I add this play? I mean, this looks like a game I would play, and I was eyeing this as potentially being a play for me. But Stanford, man, they're just so bad. Although I know it's factored into the line. Stanford, they're not going to make a bowl or anything like that. I mean, they're pretty much done for the season. But actually, this is senior day for Stanford. This is their final home game, and they're coming out of a bye. They went into a bye losing horribly to NC State, giving up 59 points to NC State. I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to play Stanford. I mean, everything lines up for a play on Stanford in this game. And that bye comes at a good point, man. Like if a bye is going to help at all, it's going to be at a spot like this where you gave up 59 points and had one of your worst games of the season, man. But that was Stanford having to go east again. I mean, it hasn't been easy for them. They've had to play 3 games out in the Eastern time zone this year with this ridiculous conference shakeup that they've had in college football. And they had to go to South Bend as well, which you can't blame them for losing that game. They faced a reasonably tough schedule. I mean, Clemson, SMU, Notre Dame, those aren't easy games. So, man, Stanford, I mean, if the bye is going to help them at all, it's going to be here where they went into it on the worst note possible. And now they have their biggest game remaining, probably the only game left on the schedule that they have any reason to pay attention to, with ranked Louisville coming into their place and Louisville in a bad spot on the other side. You know what? Fuck it. Let's do it. This is going to be the first play that I'm going to talk about, even though I think it's actually, I think it's the same time as what my first play was going to be. So we're going to make this Stanford. What's the line on this? I'll have to look. It's probably 20.5 is what I'm going to mark it at. Something like that. Yeah. Louisville's up from 19.5 to 20.5. They got 86% of tickets, but 93% of the cash right now. I don't know if I buy that cash disparity is gonna pan out and stay like that, because I don't see what professional bettor is going to be coming in and laying points like this with Louisville, other than the fact that, yeah, Stanford does suck, even though I think Stanford did have a lot of returning starters this year. They just lack talent, man, and they have not figured out who their quarterback is. Who's their quarterback going to be in this game? I have no idea. Does it matter as far as the schedule is concerned, as far as the handicap in this game is concerned, the scheduling spot? No, I don't think it really does. I mean, I don't think it matters because none of Stanford's quarterbacks have really been that effective. But this just looks like a spot play to me, man. Let's do it. Stanford plus 20.5. Hopefully it gets there. That's going to be the first play. Stanford. Oh, my God. I mean, I think it's a reasonable play to make, man. Just hang within that number. And like I said, it's senior night as well. So they have multiple reasons to show up for this game. And they want to at least send those seniors away without embarrassing themselves in this game, man. So Stanford will be a play in that one. What's up, Justin? Missouri State versus North Dakota State. It's a top 15 in the FCS. Yeah, that's a good FCS game. Let me see. Do we have that game on the... it might be here. Looks like we do not know what the line is here, but maybe ESPN might actually have it. Let me see. If I switch this to... Can I look at FCS somewhere? Yeah, I can. Let me see. Just for you, Justin. North Dakota State against Missouri State. Yeah, that's a nice looking matchup there. It's going to be on ESPN Plus, so you can watch it, man. Does ESPN Bet have this game? Books have to be offering this game, right? I don't see a line on this. I don't know. I think maybe you might see lines come out on this tomorrow or something. I don't know, but there should be a line on this. I mean, it's at North Dakota State. I assume they're the better of these two teams, so I would assume North Dakota State is going to be favored by like at least 4 points in this game would be my guess. I don't know exactly what the line is going to be. North Dakota State's still one of the best teams in FCS based on the power ratings that I looked at a while back. And they do also have a win over South Dakota State, who is one of the other best FCS teams. And we saw them play competitively against Colorado at the beginning of the season as well. Jake Paul won. I told you that would happen. Some people are going to owe me something. Yeah, that's true. The monkeypox factor is going to be in play in this California game. More so if it was in San Francisco, though. But Louisville might catch some monkeypox there. They're not vaccinated for it. They're not used to it. Stanford, they're going to have a hard time if Trump implements his plan to end diversity admissions. That's it. Yeah, all Chinese basketball team at every Ivy. Hey, man, Jeremy Lin Sanity. We're going to bring back the Lin Sanity here, man. Why not? Oh man, that looked weird. It looked like my screen share was just a white, like blank screen. I don't know what that was because I just had it up on this college football score screen the entire time, I think. Yeah, I have ESPN Plus. Oh, you actually work for them? Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, man. I don't know what the line actually is in that game though, but we'll figure that out tomorrow. Maybe we'll see what happens with that. I don't do anything with FCS though. All right. Let's talk about my other actual 2 plays here, where I do have 2 other plays. Another one's going to be Colorado minus 11. I took this yesterday or maybe the night before that. I forget when I took this, but the line is moving up on Colorado, man. So I still don't think it's that much of a difference, though. Like, I think it's between 11 and 13. It's not that much of a difference. It might come back down a little bit just because it's gotten up so high. I don't know. You don't want it to get to 14, though, but anything that's between, anything that's above 10.5 and below 14 is very close to being the same number, basically. Colorado, it looks like they were 9 with juice at some point. I never saw it there, and they're up to 13. I like the Colorado side here quite a bit. Utah at 63% of tickets with 76% of the cash on the side of Colorado. The one hesitation that I might have here, but it's not enough to keep me off of this, would be that Utah does play defense. They still are able to play defense. I mean, that's the one thing that's been consistent for them this season. Their defense has been good. They still play physical defense in Colorado. Probably not totally used to it. But I think both of these teams are now new to the Big 12, right? And they were both in the Pac-12 last year. So these teams are used to playing each other. So it does mean that Utah's not unfamiliar with playing at Colorado, but I don't think that really is going to matter that much either, even though I've also been saying Colorado is overrated. I said they were overrated last year, which they were. I've been saying they're overrated this year, and I think maybe they still are because they've really not faced a difficult schedule. Like, they lost to Nebraska, and that really looks ugly now, and their other loss is their other, like, good opponent that they face at Kansas State. They lost that game at home. But I think this is just a spot play, man. I just think that it's a bad spot for Utah, which I'll talk about in a minute. Colorado, I mean, they're still in contention for the Big 12 title, man. So they're going to show up for these games because they have a chance to actually make the playoff. As crazy as that sounds, if they win out, which is not out of the realm of possibility because these opponents are not very strong here. Kansas and Oklahoma State and a Cam Rising-less Utah team. Colorado could potentially win out and make the playoff and then probably embarrass themselves in the playoff. And I would kind of like to see that, to be honest. Everybody hyping Colorado. They get into the playoff, and then they just get smacked down once they have to face a team that's actually good. That would be lovely if that happened. But I think this spot is just bad for Utah, man. So Colorado, like I said, they have reason to continue showing up in these games. They are coming off a decent win over Texas Tech, one of the more formidable opponents that they faced this year. But Texas Tech has no defense. I mean, their defense sucks. So Colorado is having to step in and play at like a better defense. But at the very least, Colorado did play Utah in the Pac-12, so they did have to face this Utah defense like every year in the Pac-12 at the very least. So Colorado, they have not faced really intense defenses this year, to say the least. But I just think that Utah's in such a bad spot that I think it's just a bad situation, man. I mean, Utah, they're looking at their remaining schedule. 2 games left on the road. Their only home game is against a pretty good Iowa State team. They're looking at this, and they need to win 2 more games to become bowl eligible. I think this might be a dead Utah team, man. I mean, they had really high hopes to start the season. I think they had playoff aspirations because they were highly ranked. They had Cam Rising back again. He got hurt, and their season got completely derailed. Isaac Wilson in there, who is Zach Wilson's brother, the brother mother slayers there, the two mother slaying brothers there. We can call them that. They gangbang the MILFs, basically the MILF gangbang crew. The Wilson brothers there. Isaac Wilson has not been good, and it looks like he got hurt, I guess, because Rose was their leading passer. I don't even know who Rose is, but I guess whoever he is, he was their leading passer last week. This is just a mess for Utah, man. Utah, if they were going to get up for any game, once their season got derailed and they knew their season was over and their hopes were dashed and they had the dream crusher, they have not been the same since. They've lost every game since then. Rising being out has not helped. He tried to come back. He was still injured and he sucked against Arizona State. So they just have been awful, especially offensively since. But if they were going to get up for any game, it was this game last week, man. This is their big rivalry game against undefeated BYU coming into Utah's place. And Utah was winning this game 21-10, at halftime. 21-13 going into the fourth quarter. They never trailed in this game except for the opening points there when they were down 3-0. From their score in the second quarter on, where they were winning the entire game until the final seconds of the game. And they went for a 2-point, BYU, went for a 2-point conversion and failed. So then they needed to score again because that would have tied the game then and sent it into overtime. Utah still was able to hold them off the board after that until the final seconds where they gave up a field goal. And as we know, man, like I said, there were some reffing calls that were really questionable there. There was a reffing call that handed BYU, I think, the final drive there, if I remember correctly. I think there was a questionable call on Utah's defense that extended BYU's drive, if I remember correctly there. There might have been a couple of questionable calls there, but BYU wound up winning the game. That is just devastating for Utah. I mean, they had the game. They were going to have a monumental win, basically like a season-making win there for Utah, and they wind up losing the game at the end like that. I think they're just going to be in a horrible mental state after that. I think it's a bad spot for Utah coming off of that, man. I think we're going to see a team that really doesn't have much fight left here in Colorado. Like I said, they do still need to win these games. So I'm going to lay the points with Colorado. I don't see where Utah's scoring is going to come from here. And even if Utah's defense is good, I think their state, like in the hangover spot coming off of that, I don't know how they get back up off the mat and played that intensely. And their offense isn't going to be able to hang with Colorado. If Colorado is able to get up into the lead, Utah does not have a passing attack that can allow them to come back in games like this with Wilson or Rose or whoever's in there. I mean, Utah is much better at running the football than passing it. So if they fall behind, they're going to struggle to come back. So give me Colorado in that one. What am I looking at here? I'm trying to look at the chats as well. Yeah, get him that D. That's right, the gangbang. I'm in the corner in the hotel when the Wilson brothers are banging the MILFs. What's up, Nate? You were watching the boxing. I figured you were watching the boxing match because you weren't in here, but you fell asleep during it. Shit. Well, Nate, if you want me to talk about any games, I will, because this is going to be a somewhat shorter episode. Although this is going to wind up being an hour, but I already talked about 2 of my plays, and now I'm going to talk about the last one, which was the first one that I played. I think I might have played the Colorado one first. I forget. I played both of these like a day or 2 ago, but my last play is going to be on Florida +4. I think this is a good situational spot on Florida. This line's down from 5 to 3.5 now. If you can get 4, I like it, obviously, at 4 better than 3.5, but I don't mind taking the 3.5 either. I think LSU is in a terrible situational spot here. 72% of the tickets and 70% of the cash on the LSU side. So the public is still coming in on LSU because I think they don't understand what the dream crusher scenario is, which is why I like it, because the public never takes it into account. They're looking at it, oh, LSU is the better team. They're ranked. They have the better record. They have a really good offense. Let's take LSU. And this is a line where it basically looks like you're just playing almost LSU to just win the game, basically. It almost looks like free money to take LSU. Yeah, I'm going to say not so fast here. LSU, they're in the dream crusher scenario, man. Their season is over. They're already bowl eligible, so they're going to be in a bowl, so they don't even have to worry about that. So this is one of those, I don't know what we should call that, but what do you call it when you have a team like LSU who their goal to start the season, they were highly ranked, man. Their goal was to make the playoffs. Their goal was potentially to try for a national championship, even though I think that would have been going a little bit too far because their defense is not good enough to win a national championship, but they could have made the playoffs at the very least for sure. So that was their goal at the very least, was to make the playoffs. I mean, what's the situation when your loftiest goal, your like most lofty, reasonable goal, like making the playoffs, is dashed, but you've already accomplished your other goal, which you don't even really care about, to make a bowl. I don't know what you call that, but it's still the dream crusher scenario, man, because LSU, they had lost one other game, so they lost their opener against USC, and then they were rolling along. They got this big, important win against Ole Miss, which was also revenge. They did beat South Carolina, who we know South Carolina is pretty good now, and that game was close. Then they finally lost the game to Texas A&M, who also is good and plays really good defense and is way better defensively than LSU is. That was their second loss. They needed this game against Alabama, man. That was effectively an elimination game last week. I expected LSU to show up a lot more than they did, even though I did think that Alabama was the better team, but I didn't like the spot for Alabama there. But Alabama, I mean, not only are they the better defense, but they are just the better team. They crushed LSU in that game. Alabama came in and they had something to prove in that game, and LSU basically proved to us that they're still not back to that level that they were when they were like competing for championships. LSU's not back to the Jamarcus Russell era level LSU, man. They're not at the level where they're going to have their quarterbacks drafted and bust in the NFL. Instead they're having their quarterbacks do well in the NFL, even though their college program isn't even doing as well. Jaden Daniels does look pretty good, man. And Malik Neighbors looks very good as well. Wide receiver on the Giants there. But LSU, that ended their season, man. That game against LSU, there's nothing else to say about that. They have nothing left to play for, really, man. So they're already going to be in a bowl. And once we get to the bowls, I mean, I can talk about this more, but in bowls, you want to look for teams. You want to look to go against teams like LSU in bowls, dude. Teams that had loftier goals, that wanted to make the playoffs now in this case, and they're going to be in some crap bowl that they don't care about being in because this is a program that always makes bowls and has higher goals than that. So you're going to want to look to fade LSU in whatever crap bowl they're going to be in, man, because they're probably going to be up against a team that's more excited to be there, like a lesser tier team that's going to be excited to be like, hey, we get to face LSU here. That's exciting. So just something to look forward to in the future there. But LSU, coming off that loss that ended their season, then I think this is a bad spot for LSU. They're having to go on the road to the Swamp. That's not an easy thing to do, even though LSU's been okay on the road, but they did lose to Texas A&M, so only one of their three losses was on the road, but this USC game was a neutral site game. They were able to win at Arkansas, but Arkansas is not that great. And then that South Carolina game, they probably should have lost, to be honest. It was really close. So they've been worse on the road than at home, but I mean, that's to be expected. Most teams are. Florida, they're still alive for a bowl, man. And I'm pretty sure that Florida didn't make a bowl last year. So I think they came into this season thinking we got to get back to a bowl at the very least, man. That's probably their goal here. And their goal is still possible because they got LSU here. This is a winnable game. I'm betting Florida. LSU's in a horrible dream crusher spot. So Florida could win this game. They're probably not going to beat Ole Miss. And then you could see a 5-win Florida team potentially going into this final game against Florida State. Florida State has been awful this year. Florida's probably going to be a favorite there. I mean, they're the better team. So Florida, it's still a reasonable reasonable hope for them that they're going to be able to make a bowl game here and get back to that at least after they have not been in a bowl for I think since probably 2 years ago, maybe. I don't know if they have multiple years without a bowl, but Florida, they're going to be motivated anyway here, man, because LSU's coming into their house and they're coming off an ugly loss to Texas. I mean, it is Texas. Texas is a great team, but Florida just got blown out in that game, man. You get blown out like that and you have another ranked opponent coming into your house. I think you're going to show up for this game. I expect Florida to show up for all those reasons I just stated. In Florida, I don't think they're as bad as they look, man. I mean, they've lost to some good teams. I mean, this schedule has been a gauntlet. I mean, Miami, Texas A&M is obviously ranked pretty high now. Tennessee, on the road, they took Tennessee into overtime. Georgia, Texas, I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, those are top teams in the entire nation, so you can't really blame Florida for most of these losses, really. And they were able to beat UCF, who's not that bad, really. UCF kind of under the radar team there. So Florida hasn't been that bad. I don't know what their quarterback situation is because Mertz got hurt. I think they actually pulled Mertz at one point, and the crowd wanted Lagway to be in there, and Lagway's played for them a little bit, so he was in there. But now they've gone with Warner because maybe Lagway's been hurt. Aiden Warner, I don't know who this guy is, but I don't know if he's going to be their quarterback in this game or not. But I just, again, like I said with that other, whichever other team I was talking about, Stanford maybe, I just don't even, or Pitt, maybe I was talking about Pitt, I don't remember. Both, I guess. I just don't even think I care, man. This is about the situational spot, the scheduling spot here. I like Florida to show up in this game and cover this number. So that's what I'm doing. I'm taking the points with Florida. I do thrive in the swamp. Yeah, I'm a swamp creature. I was on their show tonight, in fact. I was an honorary swamp creature with those guys tonight. Burritos against Ramos. I didn't see that. Barrios. Yeah. Yeah, your autocorrect is, or Barrios. Yeah, you're driving down to the barrio, going 15 miles an hour because you're already stoned. If you know that Offspring song, Mota. It's a nice song about marijuana. But yeah, I was not paying attention to any of those fights tonight. Maybe I should pay more attention to the fights, but I just don't. I'm paying attention to football, basketball, hockey, whatever. All the sports, man. So, I mean, if Nate's not shouting out any of these other games to talk about, I mean, that's going to do it for me, man, in this show. I mean, I'll keep it to an hour. I wound up with 3 plays, or I thought I was going to have 2. So my plays one more time, college football, are Colorado -11, Stanford +20.5, and Florida +4. And as I mentioned, my strongest lean that I'm not actually playing right as of now, probably not going to play it, but I do like Wisconsin plus the points quite a bit as well, because I do think that is a major revenge spot up next for Oregon, looking ahead to Washington there. So I like Wisconsin in that one as well. Ukulele cover of what? I don't even know what song you're talking about, Charles, before I get out of here. I am Tower Gang Toad, of course. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks for hanging out during and after the fight, because I know you guys like the fights more than college football in some cases. I don't know, man. I've been so good in college football the last few weeks. There's got to be some regression. So it might happen this week, and I really don't want it to. Oh, ukulele cover of Mota. I think I did one already. It might still be up on my channel. You might be able to go find it if you search for it. I'm actually very confident I did one. But yeah, Tower Gang Toad on Twitter, of course. Follow the Tower Gang podcast. Every Wednesday night we are on, man. We did an episode this week. We were coal-less in that episode because a dog bit his kid's face off. So that's awesome. I thought it was a fun episode, nonetheless, a funny episode. You can go subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. To get more of the most offensive comedy on the planet that you love. You get pre-show, post-show, hang out with us in a Telegram. And yeah, I always shout out Flapper.net as well on the big football shows here. Flapper, FLAPPR. I mean, they keep doing what they do, man. They're the world's finest smut blog is what they are, and they claim to not be a smut blog. They talk a lot about women. They do talk about football. They have good NFL rundowns each week. They put some comedy into everything. They infuse comedy into everything they do. Why wouldn't you like it, man? They talk about comedy, politics, and they are our guys politically as well, if you agree with me politically. Yeah, but what else? What else is there to like, man? Or what else? What is there not to like? I should say. With talking about women football and being funny while you do it, and also talking about politics a little bit, even though that's the worst of those things. What about pit bulls? Yeah, Cole. Well, Cole. You know, Cole is a dog killer. He kills. He kills like every dog he comes into contact with. But his dogs are not pit bulls. His dogs are dachshunds, and they're still wreaking havoc on his 2-year-old son or however old his son is. Those dogs, man. I don't know what to tell you, man. And one of his dachshunds is totally crippled too, and like one of his dachshunds like threw out his back at the age of 3 or something, and I think the dog is like in like a wheelchair type of thing, has like wheels for back legs. I don't know if that was the dog that attacked the kid, but yeah, he's got to put antifreeze out obviously to protect his kid, man. You got to protect the kids. And yes, check out Flapper. They're fun dudes, man. That's gonna do it, man. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I will be back tomorrow night. I'll do my NFL show. I got at least 2 NFL plays, maybe 3. There are 2 that I like quite a bit, and another one that I was eyeing like all week, and now I'm like second guessing it, which I haven't played yet. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with those, and I'll be back in the morning talking about college basketball, which has been my nemesis so far. It's been awful. And I will be talking about hockey and NBA if those things are happening tomorrow, and see if we can find more spots. Hockey has been really good so far, and NBA has been mediocre, but I think I'm up in the NBA a little bit. So hopefully all of that continues. And college football has been crushing, so hopefully that continues as well. Thanks, guys. Peace out. Have a good night. Let's get some sleep for once. Yeah, the get right hours. Yeah, we got to get right in a bunch of different ways, man. I got to get sleep, and I got to get right after this 1-4 night tonight. Mostly college basketball just killing me so far. Once we get into conference play, I'm going to be way better, though. Get 8 hours, that's never going to happen. I'm going to be in the get right hours, though. I like that better. I never sleep 8 hours. I sleep like maybe 4 on weekends and like 2 on weekdays at most. I'm going to die. I just inject caffeine, coffee, black coffee, intravenously into my veins, man. Hook it to my veins. Peace out, guys. Thanks for hanging out.